What's up, everybody? This is Phil Rogacki.
And I'm Jared Abergina.
You're listening to Two Tree Guys Podcast.
All right, everyone. We're here at ArborFest, Asheville, North Carolina, and we're still here. Man, we're still here. I thought it's been a long week.
Well, it's been a long week for you because you started at Arbor Expo. Some of us just got here on Friday.
Yeah. True that. So, thanks for joining us. We're here with our good friend Dustin Goodman. You're on Two Tree Guys Podcast. Your guest host Eric Palacios,
Yes, sir.
good friend and colleague
Yes,
Dustin
sir.
Goodman. And I know you. I know.
Well, we met here in
We
2019. Well, I first saw you in 2018 at the Waxahachie comp, but that was my first competition ISA experience. And I just see some guy in like bright red pants and a blue shirt dropping trees after the comp, and I'm like, yo, what's going on here? And then fast forward, and I met you at ArborFest.
Yeah. We've had a good friendship. We've learned a lot from each other. How did you get into this? Like how did you get I think I know a little bit, but I don't know the story, like the official story, you know?
So,
we're gonna make a movie about you, so we need the official story of how you got into it.
Okay, so the way this started for me is I've worked off the ground. You know, I toted shingles when I was 16. I did Christmas light installation coming in and out of the military, and so I was always comfortable working off the ground.
Yeah.
But I had never seen an arborist. I never saw a tree climber. There was loggers in my area, but I had never saw anyone climb a tree with a rope. So I never knew you could make money doing this. 2011. I left a job at AT&T and I went into inside industry, you know, going to climb the corporate ladder because I thought that's where all the money was at. I couldn't work in labor like I had been my whole life and make a decent wage.
Mm-hmm.
I took a job at AT&T in summer of 2011 and ended up hating life. I was about to
Really?
turn, yeah, dude.
What were you doing there?
Tech support. I was level 2 tech support for their UVerse system. So after you got thoroughly angered by whoever you spent 6 hours on the phone with, they would send you to me, and then we'd start trying to solve problems. So
Got it.
you'd be talking to somebody on the other side of the world, and then you'd get me in Dallas, Texas, ready to yell at somebody. And I loved the problem solving aspect of it. I loved the customer service aspect of it, but I did not like sitting in a box like this and answering calls all day. Like I found myself, they paid great. I was making $20-something an hour in my early 20s. I thought that was where the money was at.
Oh man.
And just started hating life. I found myself looking out the window at the landscaper like, oh my God, I wish I could just go mow the yard and make this money. Like I'm so bored. Finally got tired of that job and left it in 2011. Took the next job at the farmer's market, tossing pumpkins for $8 an hour. And I was absolutely so much happier. I was in the Dallas farmer's market in October tossing pumpkins. Got a job. My friend Andrew Cooper gave me a chance to come out and do some Christmas lights in Tyler, Texas with an electrical company they were working for. I'd been doing Christmas lights since I was a teenager. No big deal. Showed up thinking we're just going to run lights on houses and bushes like we always did. The company had a master electrician that owned it, and he also installed all kinds of different electrical products. So he had me digging trenches. So I showed up to climb on a roof, and I end up with a shovel in my hand. I'm 6'3". I ain't never liked digging. I'm good at it, but that back gets to killing me because I'm kind of an intense person. So over time, I did not like that either. I show up in Tyler, Texas. Two guys show up in an S10. Jorge and Reynaldo Campos. They both pulled up, hopped out of a little S10 with a rope and harness, walked up to a tree and started climbing. And I was like, I want to do that forever. Like, what are they doing? They're getting paid. And remember, my number was 25 an hour. I was making $25 an hour. And then I went out and I was making 10 with this shovel. And I was like, what are they getting paid to do that? And he's like, oh, that guy's making 22 and that guy's making 25. And I was like, oh, I want to do that forever. And what I was seeing was not what we're doing here at ArborFest. It was not the competition network. It was
the grungy work.
It was 2 under, 1 over taut line on 16 strand. We were hip thrusting everything. But the biggest thing was we were installing lighting. We weren't climbing with spikes. I wasn't making cuts on trees. I was working for very high-end clients, installing a very high-end product, and we had to carry ourselves a certain way. But that did not bleed over into the safety aspect of things, right? They were climbing the same way in 2012 that someone was taught in 1968 with just a little bit better rope. So I immediately ended up with a Cheryl catalog to order some rope from. And I'm like, well, why don't we do this? Well, why don't we do this? And why don't we do this? And they're like, oh, we've been doing it this way for 50 years. It's like, yeah, you used to check continuity on the wire with your fingers. And now Fluke has a multimeter and you use that. I don't want to test continuity with my fingers anymore. I want to use these tools that make my life a little bit easier. Fast forward a couple years, I bounced around the country, worked everywhere from the Florida Keys to Northern California on that taut line, hip thrusting with a Klein tool belt, and
putting lights in trees.
Putting lights in trees. I got to work. Synthetic moonlight is what
honestly, that's tree work is hard, but that's fucking hard work. Like I've put some lights on trees, and it's not easy.
It's a different way of going about climbing and working a tree.
It's different at height profession, you know, like
pretty much because we were working with electrical conductors, right? Yeah. So they wouldn't let us climb with spikes. Obviously, spiking around electrical wires could be bad. And they figured out that it was easier to teach tree climbers basic electrical skills and get them certified as apprentice electricians than it was to teach a journeyman electrician how to climb a tree.
Yeah.
And so
plus he ain't fucking having it, right? He makes more money on the ground than what he does on like in a tree. So like, yeah, I wouldn't either.
But they would pay tree climbers. Like in those days, I was seeing North Texas wages 12 to 15 an hour for a climber, right? Doing the production work.
You're talking about back in the day. That was good money, man. I was making $7 an hour then, you know?
Exactly.
Working for a utility.
So 2014, 2012, I found landscape lighting. It was November 11, I saw a climber. By February of 2012, I was in a tree. Mm-hmm. But there was no training program. There was no instruction. His climber quit. And I had been bugging him like, oh, I want to climb. And they're like, no, white guys don't climb trees. I'm like,
white man can't jump.
Yeah, white man don't climb trees. He was like, because it was a dominated industry by a bunch of guys that all came from the same area, Guanajuato. A couple of, like an uncle came over and he taught all his nephews and they taught all their cousins and they dominated this one little niche.
Well, and I think it's like no one really else wants to do it too, right? Like,
those companies were exploiting those people in that way. Like the companies knew that they could tap this labor network and then use that. And they're like, no, you don't want to do this. I'm like, dude, are you serious? They just ran up a tree. I never knew you could do that with a rope.
So what company was that?
The first company was Gleason and Company. It was an offset.
Pass me that pen.
Yeah, I got you. But the company that you're looking for is John Watson Landscape Illumination.
John Watson?
Yeah, they're still based in Dallas, Texas. They're still installing lights all over the country. At one time, they had offices all over the country, worldwide operations. Like the original founder of that company, they called him Mr. Moonlight. He was in the 60s and 70s, was doing all the Hollywood stars. I got to work all over Southern California, the Hollywood Hills, Bel Air, like places that someone from East Texas would have never seen.
Right.
Because I climb stuff. And I could not believe what this was allowing me to do. It allowed, they paid for travel. There was per diem.
That still sounds like a cool job. I don't know.
And now being a comp climber, I wish I could have done that as comp training, because what you see, like if you get a beginning climber and you're training them in the training world, they're not going to be out making 3-inch reduction cuts, right? Not in their first year. They're going to be in the middle of the tree, working removals, working pruning, doing stuff that's within their skill set. Well, in lighting, everything was the designer put a light here on a 3-inch branch at 7 degrees, and we had to go off of an AutoCAD blueprint. It was super specific. Everything was set up to where that this client would see the illumination without the source of the illumination. So they drove us and flew us all around the country, and I got really good at it. It was pretty much painting light on a black canvas, but it allowed me to go out to pieces of a tree that I would have never otherwise seen. Like I was climbing on a taut line, having to work on vector forces, because I'm sub 200 now, but I was 240. Like I was hip thrusting.
Really? 240?
240.
I can't imagine you being 240.
Yeah, I could throw me now. But Tiffany was pregnant at the time, so I was getting baby weight, and I was doing truck and trailer tree work and hip thrusting every day, right? So my shoulders, my arm, I was a lot larger, and the closest guy to me in weight doing lights was 140 pounds.
Wow.
So I'm 100 pounds off of this guy before I strap a tool belt.
So you do that for a while. You've been doing the lighting, you've been already traveling, you start getting in the tree game. How did you finally make that jump into like tree work? Like who was it with?
The climbers that I was working with at John Watson, many of them, like I said, they were all cousins and friends and brothers, and we'd be out there and he's like, oh yeah, doing side jobs. They'd go on the weekend and do side jobs. I'm like, what are y'all doing? Oh, we're gonna go cut down that tree. Well, how much are you gonna make to cut down that tree? $500. what? You're going to make $500? Looking back, dude, they were underbidding stuff
Oh, absolutely.
drastically. But when you're making $540 a week, $500 in a day sounds like a rich man's world, right?
All right.
So I had no business climbing and cutting. I should not have been in the tree with a chainsaw, but my climbing skills did not show these guys that.
Yeah.
I didn't make the jump with I went from a very professional company in the sense of the way they served their clients and the way they ran their business and the way everything was structured, W-2, health insurance and everything per diem. And then I went into Craigslist tree work. And I left that company. I was tired of traveling. So I was 2 weeks out, 2 weeks in, or 3 weeks out and 1 week in, and constantly on the road. My youngest daughter was born, and I told them when Tiffany was pregnant, they made me pay for a flight back from California when she had to go to the hospital. And I let them know, hey, my wife's pregnant. She won't go to the doctor, but she calls me and tells me she's on the way to the hospital. I told her I was on the way to the airport, and I left Thousand Oaks, California in a work van, and I started driving towards LAX. And they're like, well, we can't get you on a flight until tomorrow. I was like, well, this company Amex says I'm going to get on a flight today, and we'll figure it out later. And they let me get a flight, and then they waited 3 paychecks until I had a 96 hour week and a 80 something hour week. I had so much overtime, and they took that $500 flight out on the heaviest overtime check I was going to have that month. But we didn't discuss it. They just pulled it out, and I was like, okay, well, from this point forward, as long as she's pregnant, I will go anywhere in the 4-state region of Texas that I can drive. If I have to get on a plane, I'm not taking the trip. If I can leave in my vehicle, so they covered my vehicle cost at that point. They would pay my gas and my per diem, and I would drive my personal vehicle to any job in Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Texas. Fast forward to December, Nina was born, and I knew I wasn't going to be on the road anymore, and Christmas lights came back into play. I didn't do trees that winter, mostly because it was wintertime. I was in Texas, and my skill set did not dictate that I kept busy during the winter, right? I was one of those expendable resources that stayed busy in spring and summer. I ended up going back into Christmas lights, back into Craigslist ads. I started answering, I had a 3-city circle. You'll know this triangle. I lived in Dallas, but Austin was 3 hours away and Houston was 4 hours away. So between Austin, San Antonio, Houston, and Dallas, I would find an ad that could use a climber, and I would run that 1,500 truck all over the state. And I did that for a few years. Fast forward a little bit, I was working with a old logging company in Texarkana, Texas, where I'm from. I was contracting while I still lived in Dallas. And what got me into the industry, I would say, what I would consider the group we're in now, I walked up on a job site, and a guy had a sticker, and it was a heart and a tree. And I was like, dude, I like trees. What's that? He's like, oh, it's treestuff.com. And I was like, okay.
Who was that dude?
His name's Gary Seaford. He's a flight medic, and he was a climber, climbed in spikes, one of the best removal climbers I had ever worked with. He taught me how to negative block. He taught me how to do the things that allowed me to stay safe, but he just didn't wear a lid, right? And then after I headbutted him a little bit and showed back up, now when I do see him climb, I think he's a nurse at this point, but the man would do, he was a flight medic tech on a helicopter. So he would do graveyard shift on a helicopter as a medic all night, and then come do a few removals in the morning with his cousin's company. It was
just like every other crazy tree guy.
Yeah, right. But I wish I could get him around and do the rescue stuff, right? Because he was saving lives all night, responding to car wrecks, and then just busting up removals in the morning.
Yeah.
And he would come get the stuff started, and I would finish out the day for him. But we were able to, he showed me, he's like, oh, it's treestuff.com. And I had already been, the Cheryl catalogs were the basis for where I'm at now, right?
Yeah, those, I mean, they're still cool. Those first ones were cool as hell. It was like advertising for the industry almost.
2011
you
was
see
my
Gary
first.
Thacker on that main one. I saw him yesterday. Did you see him?
Yeah, I got to talk to him a little bit.
Yeah.
I got to hang out with him at Geezer's this
I was
year.
like, bro, I'm never really starstruck by anyone, but can I have your autograph?
Dude,
He's like, dude, I don't do anything for them anymore. I'm like, still, I think I have. He was one of the first dudes I ever hung up on my wall. You know, that Cheryl had that picture of him with the camp saddle on there.
See,
real badass, doing a badass.
I didn't get that one. The first poster I got was something Tree Stuff was giving away in 2016.
It was like Kevin Humphreys on there.
I don't even remember.
The K-Hump.
They were giving them like for the orders. I ordered 20 of them or something, and it was just giving them to kids every time we go to a job site.
So you get there, and was Gary too?
His name was Gary Seifert. Yeah. So
Gary got a tree
he
stuff
got a
sticker
tree stuff
on
sticker,
there,
and
right?
he's like, "Oh, that's where I buy my equipment." And I had already been using the Cheryl catalog, which, by the way, I got to thank Toby Cheryl in person this weekend for everything that he did in those catalogs that allowed me to have the basis for the research that allowed me to get here.
So
right?
much info.
Dude, I learned a negative.
So much
dude,
info.
The diagrams,
cartoons and
that's
everything.
Stumpy, bro. That's why I started growing my beard out. I was like, I'm gonna be a lumberjack like that
I'm gonna
guy.
be a stumpy.
Yeah, bro. And I
So
had
Gary gets you like into this, and you start doing removals with him too more, and then
Yeah.
you start breaking out more into doing
it was
like
the stickers, right? And so I look up that website, treestuff.com, and they had because this was 2015. I wasn't wearing a helmet. Like, I started climbing trees in my Army work boots, my Army ACU pants, my boonie cap. That was my like safety squint, bro. Like, I'm sitting there. I had my plug-in headphones in for Ear Pro because I could listen to my music and answer phone calls, and that's how I would cut.
Yeah.
I see this sticker, and I start going to this website, and they had, this is 2014. They had a website, dude, or 2015. So I found this event called Crash Course, and it was $200. It was a weekend of training in Indianapolis, Indiana. And, I learned the hard way. Crash Course sounds like the best thing for me.
Wow.
So I bought that.
Who put that together?
Tree Stuff, dude.
But who would teach it?
So that was the best part. I showed up, and I had no idea who anybody was. So I show up in my first event in blue jeans and Ariat boots and a tank top. Like, hey, I'm from Texas. Nick Bonner had his first Ninja Arborist challenge.
Oh.
But Nick Araya was teaching splicing. Eric Vega was there. But the cast of trainers was Christian Michael Schultz,
Oh, wow.
Otis Sisk,
Oh.
Jared Abergina, Nick Araya, I already said that. Rich Hattier was talking single line. Taylor Hamill was doing rigging forces.
You walked
Dude,
into the
Tim-
mama load.
Tim Ard was doing a felling class. Matt Cornell had his saddle out there talking to people and walking them through stuff.
Wow.
And Otis Sisk did job site safety and communication. So my first three classes were Otis Sisk, Christian Michael Schultz, and Jared Abergina. My mind got blowed and peeled back. I was
I
like,
can imagine. You're like, fuck, why have we been doing this like this?
Well, what
like,
it
you
showed
probably
me-
went back to like the lights and everything.
yeah,
like,
well, you know me, right? So I'm obviously a pretty intense individual. I have a slightly above average amount of energy. And I showed up at this place, and I would typically try to tone myself down in a professional setting, right? Because my energy level had been a liability for me growing up. I was always, go sit down, you're being too loud, right? Right, you know what I mean? Like, too much energy, go sit down somewhere, right? And I show up here, and I was making a conscious effort to make sure I didn't impose, like, I have an overbearing personality. So I'm kind of be calm a little bit, right? I show up, and I get into Christian's communication class. And Christian Michael Schultz is talking with his hands, and he's animating, and he's engaging us. And I'm like, I'm sitting here trying
He's
to be
just
quiet.
as rowdy as you, and
I
jumpy
start,
and quirky
I start
and weird.
unbuckling the muzzle, and I'm like, oh, it's okay to do this here. Like, I take the muzzle off. I'm like, you can be excited and a professional.
Yeah.
I was like, I might have found the right spot, man.
That's
Like,
awesome. Who do you think was like in all that? Who do you think was a good mentor to you that taught you, that inspired you in this career to stick with it, to stay with it? Who was one of that person that
Dude,
really
I-
helped you make that decision to say, like, you know what?
I told you when I saw those first two guys go up a tree, there was nothing but I'm going to do that forever.
Who were those
Yeah,
guys?
Reynaldo Campos and Jorge. God, I can't remember Jorge's last name. And those guys, like I said, they were like, hey, white guys don't climb, right? So
They were from John Watson's.
yeah, John Watson. They worked at Watson, and Ronaldo's still doing trees. His cousin Moy Chavez, like Moy, if I could get Moy out to a comp, man, he's like 110 pounds soaking wet, has the body type, and just did crazy things in a tree. But this guy would like undo his rope. We didn't have lanyards. We had a short rope and a long rope.
Yeah, the guys I worked with that taught me would foot lock
Yeah.
up there without any means of securing, and they would hold their foot lock while smoking a cigarette, tie their knot,
So
and
for
then
me,
they'd be ready to roll.
Yeah, Moy and them didn't do that. I blew my rotator cuff years ago when I was in the Army and had some injuries to my shoulder. So when I got into this, they were throwing steel snaps on a 16 strand with a monkey's fist, right? And so a couple of those, the shoulder don't like that. So I found a throw ball, found the big shot, started using that.
That's
and I was
funny.
the same way. My first job as the climber was in Houston, Texas. We were out by the Galleria, super tall pines. We were installing lights. We're not using spikes. First limb is 50, 60 feet. maybe I'm giving that a little off because I had a 40-foot ladder and I couldn't come close. So I put my 40. This is how we did lights. We put the ladder up against the tree, climb to the top, tie around the tree, and then set our rope as high as we could go. And these guys would hip thrust and advance their knot. And I was like, ooh, that sucks. So I did what you're talking about. I wouldn't do it on the doubled over line. I would clip my steel snap in and I would unsecured footlock up the rope. And then when I got to where my hands would cramp or I'd get tired, I would lock my feet, tie it off, stretch my hands, shake it back out, untie the knot again, and continue up to and then go back to the work. Because I didn't have anybody saying this is how you do it. I had pictures, and the climbers, the language barrier and stuff. We didn't get a lot of teaching done. And at first it was because they didn't want to teach nobody.
Yeah.
Because guys showed up, I want to climb.
Yeah.
And they get up there and now they got to damn near rescue them, right? Because they're sitting there and they're froze up. And that's what they told me. You're going to get 50 feet up and freeze up. And I was like, you don't know me. Let me try. And fast forward, I saw that. I said, I'm going to do it forever. And that was before I knew you could get paid to cut and climb. I just knew I wanted to be off the ground and working.
Yeah. What would be that one tip that you have for someone? A piece of a tip from the tops is what Phil's been calling it. You know, it's a tip from the tops of the tree. You know, what is one of those tips or just encouragement, words of encouragement that you have for someone, either like the gospel, right? The gospel. Someone's hearing it for the first time, or someone's hearing it for the last time, right? You can either be someone who's barely getting to know Jesus, or someone that dies tomorrow, and this is the last time you heard it. So, what would be a good piece of advice that you have for someone starting new, for someone thinking about leaving? They're tired in their truck right now, listening to this podcast. They don't know whether to fucking keep going with your industry or not.
Wherever you're at, look around. It's sometimes like the ISA stuff is hard to network. Show up everywhere. Like so the way I explain it, if you want to learn about war, you go where the warriors gather and they talk about the weapons that won battles, right? You show up here and you get to sit around like at an expo, right? You get so many different people. You show up, dude. The best return on investment that I've had has been coming out to an event. Arbor Fest was my first event. My first comp was Jambo 3, but it all started with me showing up because I'd sit and look at the internet and I'd look at the stuff on Facebook and I'd see it and I was in spectator mode. Get out of spectator mode. Show up. Because when you show up, you'll find out that you may look at these people like there's such a huge difference between yourself and them. But I've found out the more I'm here, the more I found my people. The more people I'm around, like you may feel like you're the only person dealing with this level of anxiety in this one thing. And then you find 10 people going through the same thing because we all bond through this common ground. So whatever your views are or whatever you're dealing with, you show up out here, you'll find your people. And it may not be the people you came to meet, right? Like I brought my wife with me, Tiffany, on this one. And she's, you know, she knows people from the comp scene. She's like, is such and such going to be there? Is this person going to be there? I'm like, don't focus on who you know. Show up and see who you can meet. And she made a friend that she's going to have for life now. And I just show up. I show up everywhere that they gather and I make sure I'm there to not miss it. And if you can stay late, like I never show up early. I'm probably going to be running in at the last minute, throwing a Hail Mary and sliding into home, but I never leave early either. I show up late because like at these events, you're
hard to get here sometimes.
Dude.
You go through a lot. Like people don't understand how much effort is put into this. So yeah, I mean, it'd be like you're saying, you know, get involved, like show up, like even if it's like to volunteer or like even if it's like because that you're running at the last minute because you're able to find some time in your schedule
batteries
to go.
Drained, show up. Like if you're tired of dealing with the idiots you're dealing with at work, if you're tired of dealing with the customers you're dealing with on the job, if you're working for the city, if you're trying to get better as a climber, show up at a comp, show up at an expo.
Yeah.
But if you're just your battery's low, man, and you need to charge that up,
come hang out with people. Come to the Arbor Fest.
Dude, this is a family reunion.
Yeah.
We're just not related.
Yeah.
Like I come, I come to see everybody, and what I see is everywhere we go, right? We leave, and I stay late.
Yeah.
I'm always there a day after the event, and I'm talking to the people in the cities where we're at, right? Yeah. And they're like, "Man, when are y'all coming back? These tree people are amazing."
Yeah, that's a big one too. Everywhere we go and there's conventions, I hear that from the people. Dude, thank you so much for being here with us. I know ArborFest is wrapping up. We still got a few people that we gotta, make contact with.
Dude, I will talk all day, microphone or not. We'll keep it going.
But we're doing dinner tonight.
Sounds good. I'm doing something tonight. So
we said we'd probably go back to that restaurant that you went to, right?
Main 131 or something like that. It's a couple miles over.
Jason wanted to hang out. Let's talk to Jason. Let's talk to a few people, and let's hang out.
Awesome.
Let's hang
Well,
out.
last thing. If you haven't been to a comp, show up. If you haven't been to an expo, show up. But when you get there, get involved. Don't just stand on the sidelines and be a spectator.
Yeah, like you
Show
said, get
up.
away from being a spectator is
Yeah.
what I put down.
Get out of
that.
spectator mode, man. Like
Yeah.
you
Help
respawn,
out,
show
fucking-
up, and you'll be amazed at how much you learn and how much you grow. Or just if you're looking for an opportunity in this industry, like, so I'm just make it real quick. I met Eric in 2019 at this event. Fast forward a month or two, he reached out to us. He had a project in South Texas and he needed a little bit of help on it. He brought myself and Andrew Cooper down there with me, and we get started on the project. Well, if you know Eric moves around a lot, right? And we're down there, we're working, and Eric all of a sudden had a class he had to go to in Boston. So Eric's like, all right, guys, I'm headed out. See you in a couple of days. And he takes off and goes to Boston. And he comes back. Job got finished. They had to wrap up some stuff. Fast forward a little bit later, I get another call. Hey, you want to come out here and do something? And it
It all
just
starts like that.
Dude,
It's like,
I just said yes. I was like, yeah, I'll do if I can. And then I get a call. 2020, COVID pops off. You know, this was all 2019. Built some momentum, kept in contact, ran into each other at Expo, spent some time at Pittsburgh. COVID popped off. I flew to Hawaii. I was out there working for 3 months in Hawaii. And while I'm in Hawaii, Eric calls me, and he's in Alaska. And he's like, oh, yeah.
Alaska, baby.
He's like, you want to come to Alaska? I'm like, dude, I can't fly from Hawaii to Alaska in
Another
June.
long-lasting relationship with one of the guys there, too.
Yeah, Fairbanks Stump Grinders, our buddy Jan. And I get a call in September. So I told him no then. That's the only one of the couple times I've told Eric no. And I get a call in September. Don't have anything going at the moment. He's like, hey, what are you doing right now? And I'm like, man, working. He's like, well, can you come to Alaska? I was like, yeah, dude, I missed it in June. When are we going? He's like, I'm here now.
That's right. The first one was missed.
Yes.
Oh, that's
And
right.
it's-
I'm
you
like,
called
what,
me
what
back.
did you say no to? I didn't really remember.
I said,
but
well, I didn't say no. I said not right now.
Not right now.
Because I was leaving Hawaii that week, and I'd been away from home for 3 months. I had a yard that was almost as tall as
just
me.
goes to show you, though, like, wanting to do something,
Yeah.
coming here, like you said, just showing up. There's always going to be someone that believes in you, that needs help, you know, that needs an opportunity.
And everybody gets something different, right? When I first showed up, I was here for the classes. There are people who are here who are seeing span rigging for the first time in their life.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm here. I'm collecting people. I'm not grabbing stickers and buffs. I'm grabbing my
Yeah.
friends up and giving them hugs. So
That's awesome, bro.
thank y'all for having me, man.
Thanks for being here, man.
I need a power hour, bro, because we just tipped the iceberg.
You need to come down to Cali. We'll do a power hour with Bob at the main show. We'll have you an hour and a half. Like those shows are long.
Well, I'm gonna have to get out there and work with you. Eric's been trying to drag me out to Cali for a minute
Let's
now.
do it. Well, thanks again for being here. You're an awesome
Give me a hug,
friend. You're an
brother.
awesome colleague. Really appreciate you. And we're still going to be sticking around here at ArborFest. Maybe get another interview before we leave. Stick around. It's been great. You're here with your co-host, Eric Palacios. Reaching out.